Number 37, editorial. The government claims that the country's nuclear power plants are entirely safe and hence that the public's fear of nuclear accidents at these plants is groundless. The government also contends that its recent action to limit the industry's financial liability in the case of nuclear accidents at power plants is justified by the need to protect the nuclear industry from the threat of bankruptcy. But even the government says that unlimited liability poses such a threat only if injury claims can be sustained against the industry. And the government admits that for such claims to be sustained, injury must result from a nuclear accident. The public's fear, therefore, is well founded. If all of the statements offered in support of the editorial's conclusion correctly describe the government's position, which one of the following must also be true on the basis of those statements? So we know that the government is claiming that the nuclear power plants in this country are safe, and that because of that, fear of accidents at these plants is groundless. So let's call this claim A. Even though the government is claiming A, they are not acting like A is true. They're acting like A actually isn't true because they're taking all these preventative actions just in case A is not true. So we have to understand what that means, what it actually means, instead of what we want to think it means. Um, for example, when we look at the answer choices, the first one says the government's claim about the safety of the country's nuclear power plants is false. This is what I believe is a very tempting answer because it very easily looks like what we want to believe based off the premises that we have. I think it's very easy to believe that because the government says A, but they're doing something different than A, then that means A is wrong. But I think that's a very weak argument. Um, the government saying A, but taking actions in case A is not true, doesn't necessarily mean that they're lying or that their claims are false. It just means that they're smart and they're taking action just in case there's a rare chance that what they're saying isn't what happens. That's their job as a government. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to make sure that the public is protected. So I can't say that just because they're forward thinking enough to take preventative actions against a potentially dangerous situation, that means that their statements are definitely false. I can't pick A for that reason. But if I were to look at B, the government's position on nuclear power plants is inconsistent. This seems like something I can approve must be true. I know that the government is claiming A, but they're acting as if A is not true. That makes them inconsistent. If they were consistent, they would claim A and they would act as if A were true, or they would claim not A and they would act as if A is not true. They're combining two things. They're claiming one thing, but acting on its opposite. That's inconsistent. I can definitely prove that they're doing that. So B would be my answer choice. C, the government misrepresented its reasons for acting to limit the nuclear industry's liability. Misrepresented its reasons just means they're lying. We don't know that the government lied. I cannot prove that. In D and E, I would cross out for kind of the same reasons. If I were to read D, unlimited financial liability in the case of nuclear accidents poses no threat to the financial security of the country's nuclear industry. And the phrase that sticks out to me in D is poses no threat. And this word particularly sticks out to me. And E, the only serious threat posed by a nuclear accident would be to the financial security of the nuclear industry. The phrase that sticks out to me in E is only serious threat, and the particular word that sticks out to me is only. The reason I would cross out D and E is because, again, like we talked about with number 36, this is a must be true question. So we want to find answer choices that are a little bit milder and weaker in their language. And both D and E are incredibly hard to prove because their language is very strong. It's very hard for me to prove all or nothing, and that's kind of what D and E are going for, all or nothing. And that's very, very difficult for me to use a proof that I have to prove that. So I can't pick D and E for those reasons, and that still leaves me with B.